Melanie Chavez, and I'm gonna give you a brief introduction about the topic of drugs. First, we need to know what are the drugs. According to the OMS, the drugs are substances that are used voluntarily to experience new sensations or modify the physical state. They are divided into two kinds, the legal ones and the non-legal. The most known examples of the non-legal ones are the marijuana, the cocaine, the heroin, the LSD, etc. In my opinion, it's very important to talk about this because as adolescents we are more sensitive to be surrounded of these risk factors, and sometimes we act according to the situation. For example, we sometimes do what our friends say, and that makes us make foolishly. Also, it is important to know that the drugs can ruin our life because consume them have a lot of consequences. Meanwhile, I'm gonna give you some examples of famous people that ruined their lives because of the drugs. Lindsay Lohan is probably one of the most known examples of what the drugs can do to a person. She was pretty young when she started her career on movies like Parent Trap. She had a promising career. Unfortunately, she started to consume drugs pretty young, when she was pretty young. And then she started to have problems with the justice because of her drug addiction and her problematic behavior, losing all the opportunities of work. Nowadays, she is trying to recover herself, but I think that she will never be the same talented actress. Another example is Heath Ledger. He was 28 when he was found dead in his hotel room due to cardiorespiratory arrest and overdose. He also had a promising career, and that was ruined because of the drugs. And there are a lot of examples, but the point is not mention all of them. The point is if you want to be part of them.
Hi, I am Leslie Arellano, and in this video I'm going to explain to you two different drugs, their consequences, their effects in the human body, among other things. Okay, we have the different drugs. We have the marijuana and we have the alcohol. I'm going to start to explain to you the marijuana. The marijuana are dried seeds from the plant Cannabis sativa. There are over 200 slang terms in which we can call it. We can call it Mary Jane, we can call it bubblegum, we can call it weed, okay? And also the main ingredient in this plant and in this drug is the THC. The most common way to take the marijuana is smoking it, so we have different effects in the human body. The membranes in the nerve cells in the brain have different receptors in which the THC bind. So we have that this kicks off the series of cellular reactions. Okay, now I'm going to tell you the consequences. We have the individual consequences and we have the social consequences. I'm going to start to explain to you the individual consequences. In here we have the learning problems, the difficult thinking, we have the paranoia, we have the respiratory problems, among others. In the social problems, well, as I already mentioned, we have the learning problems and the difficult thinking. So this can affect in the high school, this can affect also in the school and other things. And also the taking of marijuana is related to the aggression and to the delinquent behavior. There are different studies about the abstinence effects. What I found is that there is an overall measure of withdrawal discomfort increasingly when they stop taking this drug. Okay, now I'm going to explain to you the other drug, that is the alcohol. The alcohol is a result of the fermentation, in which the water and the yeast act on the sugar and the vegetables and fruits. Okay, so the main ingredient active in this drug is the ethyl alcohol, and also it is very important to mention that this is a depressant drug. Okay, now I'm gonna tell you the effects that this drug has in the human body. As I already mentioned, the alcohol is a depressant drug. This slows down the activity of the central nervous system, causing slow reflexes, causing depressed in the respiration and in the heart rate. Okay, now I'm going to tell you the consequences. There are the individual and the social consequences. I'm going to start with the individual. There is a liver swelling and there is also pain, there is a cirrhosis, and even there is a loss of memory. In the social consequences, we have the motor or the car accidents, we have the family violence, and there is also the legal problems. Finally, we have the abstinence effects. We have that when the people stop drinking this drug, they improve their insulin resistance, weight, BP, and cancer-related growth factors.
Hi, I am Jose Antonio Casas and I'm going to talk about the drug of heroin. What is heroin? Heroin is a white or brown powder. It is an opioid drug made from morphine. Heroin can be mixed with water and be injected with a needle. Heroin can also be smoked or snorted up the nose. All of these ways of taking heroin send a message to the brain very quickly, and that's why this drug is very addictive. The effects of this drug can be divided into two ways. The short-term effects, which some of those are dry mouth, nausea, and vomiting, and also the long-term effects, which some of those are insomnia, liver and kidney disease, and brain damage. Some of the effects of the abstinence of this drug at the beginning are going to be anxiety and to be in a bad mood, but in the future the changes are going to be really positive, such as a change in the patient's behavior. Of course, it will depend if the patient is perseverant with the treatment. The most noticed individual consequence of the use of this drug are the really bad symptoms and the fact that you can die if you abuse of this drug. Now, in the part of the social consequence, the most relevant is that you can lose the most part of your relationships that you had before you start to consume this drug. You can call relationships as a boy or girlfriend, friends, family, and others. Methamphetamine is a powerful and highly addictive stimulant that affects the central nervous system. It takes the form of a white, odorless, and bitter-tasting crystalline powder that is easily to dissolve in water or alcohol. Some of the most important effects of the use of this drug in a short period of time are the increase of the blood pressure and the increase of the body's temperature. And on the other hand, in a long period of time, the person may present several dental problems, neural death, and several damage in their brain. There are many positive things about the abstinence of methamphetamines, but I think it's important to note that the neural number will not increase after the abstinence. The most noticed individual consequence of the use of methamphetamines are the really bad symptoms, especially for the fact that you can die if you abuse of this stimulant. Now, the most important social consequence about the use of methamphetamine, as well as other drugs or stimulants, is that you can lose many relationships that you had before you start to consume the drug or the stimulant in this case. You can call relationships as boyfriend, girlfriend, best friends, even your family.
Hi, I'm Alma, and I'm going to explain you two drugs that are cocaine and tobacco. First of all, cocaine is a stimulant that comes from the coca plant, that is a shrub that comes from South America. There are two chemical forms of cocaine that are usually consumed, and that is the hydrochloride itself and the cocaine crystals, or base known as freebase. The hydrochloride salt, or the powder form of cocaine, is consumed in an injected or inhaled form. The crystals of cocaine or freebase have been processed with ammonia or sodium bicarbonate and water, and then heated to remove the hydrochloride and produce a substance that can be smoked. Cocaine increases the level of dopamine, that is a natural chemical messenger or neurotransmitter in the circuits of the brain that participate in the control of movement and reward, which causes great euphoria and excitement with a feeling of well-being. effects both in the short term and in the long term. The short term effects of cocaine use last between a few minutes and an hour, and this includes extreme energy and happiness, a part of mental alertness, hypersensitivity to light, touch, and sound, irritability, and paranoia. Other effects of the cocaine use include the restriction of the blood vessels, dilatation of the pupils, nausea, increase of the temperature body and blood pressure, acceleration or irregularity of the heart rhythm, tremors, muscle spasm, and restlessness. Apart from the effects that cocaine use causes, there are other effects that are called withdrawal effects, which are depression, apathy, drowsiness, muscle pain, restlessness, and emotional crisis. Now I'm going to say the consequences, both individual and social, that involves the use of cocaine. The individual consequences include alteration in nutrition, cardiovascular, nervous system, sexual, obstetric, and gynecological, complication of the nasal or respiratory tract, and the social consequences include problems in the family, in the school, legal problems, and economic problems. That's all about cocaine, and now I will talk about another drug that is tobacco. Tobacco is a plant that is grown for its leaves, which are dried and fermented to use for various products. The tobacco contains nicotine, which is an ingredient that can lead to addiction, and which explains why the people that consume tobacco, they cannot stop using it. It also contains many other harmful substances, and others are generated by burning it.
Tobacco is an stimulant that can increase the blood pressure and generate tachycardia. Normally, the tobacco is consumed wrapped in paper, forming a cigarette, and is considered a legal drug. We know that tobacco smoke travels a large number of chemicals that are harmful for the smoker and the people around them. There are more than 7,000 substances that are found in the tobacco smoke, and it's known that 250 of them are harmful to our health. And as if that were not enough, of these 250, we know that at least 69 of them can cause cancer. Among its short-term effects are premature fatigue, increased risk of angina, increased constipation, coughing, and expectoration, loss of appetite, disturbances, impulse rhythm, yellowing of the fingers and feet, and bad smell that comes from the mouth and the breath. The most common withdrawal effects associated with quitting are cravings for nicotine, anger, frustration, irritability, anxiety, depression, and weight gain. Now I'm going to tell you the individual and social consequences of tobacco use. The individual consequences include several types of cancer, but when we talk about tobacco and cancer, we should not only think about the lungs, because there's also other types of cancer, such as cancer of esophagus, mouth, kidney, larynx, throat, liver, bladder, stomach, pancreas, neck, uterine, colon, and rectum. In addition to acute myeloid leukemia, and outside of the different types of cancer, tobacco causes chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, diabetes, stroke, rheumatic arthritis,
cataracts, osteoporosis, aneurysm of the aorta, among other disorders. Among the social consequences are first that the smoker can affect people who breathe the tobacco smoke, and second, their family by causing them to develop a disease in the future related to smoking, or that the children, when they grow up, they can be smokers.
Listening acid diethylamine is a synthetic chemical that it is found in the ergot, that is a fungus that infects rice. It is one of the drugs that belongs to the group of psychedelics. It has several effects depending on its quantity. In small quantities, it produces change in the perception. On the other hand, when big doses are taken, it produces visual hallucinations and misperception of space and time. Sometimes what is sold as LSD can actually be other chemicals such as NBOME and 2C family of drugs, and to take too much of these other drugs can be fatal. Use solvent or dissolved under the tongue, but it can also be sniffed, injected, or smoked. Effects. You should remember that take any drug always carries some risks, but the effects of the drug are the following: euphoria and well-being, dilatation of pupils, perceptual change, headaches, nausea, fast or irregular heartbeat, increased body temperature, breathing quickly, vomiting, facial flushes, sweating and chills. Although you may feel good, you're not actually in a state of well-being. Take a large amount, the negative effects of LSD are more likely to happen, which are panic, paranoia, psychosis, and increased risk-taking. If you consume LSD, you should seek for help and support.
Well, to conclude, I will explain the general consequences of drugs so you avoid consuming them, and if you have already done so, I will explain different ways to stop using them. First, we will start with the consequences in health. Digestion. It can damage cells in the digestive tract, greatly inhibiting how the body secretes enzymes for digestion. Handling of vitamins and protein, along with slowing down how the body absorbs necessary protein, it can slow the liver, which affects how effectively it stores essential. Reduction in white blood cells. It can greatly reduce the body's white blood cell multiplication rate, which can impact how the body responds to cancers and other life-threatening diseases. Respiratory and lung damage. Because of inhalation, especially concerning the toxins of marijuana smoke, the damage to the lungs can be dramatic. Inflammation of the lungs and are common. Heart damage. Cocaine in particular is dubbed the perfect heart attack drug for a number of reasons. Abusing the drug can cause an 18% increase in the thickness of the ventricle wall and over a 30% increase in the stiffening of the aorta, two major factors that increase the risks of heart attack and stroke. Now, I will explain how to stop using drugs if you are using them, or, what is worse, you are addicted to them. There are many groups and specialized places where you can go to live and talk with other rehabilitated addicts, so you can understand how they stopped using drugs and you can stop using them, like Alcoholics Anonymous, La Rosa Rehabilitation Center, among others in Monterrey and elsewhere in the world. Finally, if you are not an addict, do not let other people incite you to consume something that you don't want, since that can cost you up to your life. Always be responsible, and if you already consume them, try to avoid them or consume them rarely, thus avoiding problems for you and your loved ones. Ándale, pruébalo.
Με έχεις κράξει, με έχεις θάψει, γιατί πολλές φορές φωτιά σου έχω ανάψει. Δεν σε έχω βλάψει, μα με